You know, the formatting that we use here in Microsoft Word is not restricted to the content that appears on the page. We can format the page itself. For example, the paper size that's going to be used, the orientation, how about the margins that affect the content on our pages. All of that can be customized. That's what we're going to talk about now as we work with a document called Bio 1. You'll find it in the Chapter 5 folder of your exercise files. As of right now, it's a 5-page document. Check the bottom left corner. We're on page 1 of 5. The other thing you'll notice about my screen is I've turned on the rulers. We did that in the previous chapter. If you're not seeing the ruler, it can be very handy when formatting pages. So go to the View tab if you don't see the ruler and click the checkbox next to Ruler to turn it on. Next, we'll go to the Page Layout tab. So there's a number of things we can do as far as page setup goes. Here's where we can adjust margins, orientation, paper size, and more. Let's start with our document here. With the ruler turned on, you can see that the margins are actually a little more than an inch on either side. And the top margin here, as you can see, this little gray shaded area is actually way more than an inch, and that's why we have up at the top this little header section, and inside the header is where we see the logo, but the actual content doesn't start till looks like about 1.5 inches. We can know for sure by going to some of those options in the page setup group here on the ribbon with page layout selected. Let's start with our paper size. We'll click the size drop down where you'll see currently letter is highlighted, 8.5 by 11. That's what we're using. But there are a number of other preset choices to choose from. Legal is popular. Guess where? In the legal community. Executive is another popular one. Over in Europe, you see a lot of A4. There are some envelopes here. And if you don't see what you need, you can choose more paper sizes here as well. Opens up the page setup dialog with paper selected. So we can make our adjustments from here if we wanted to. I'm going to go to legal, for example. And now I have 8.5 by 14. Obviously, more content's going to fit on the page, so we'll see what happens to the length of our document. What do I want to apply that to? Well, the whole document is the default, but it could be from my cursor on. So if I was on page 2 or 3, it would only affect those pages towards the end. Let's leave it at the whole document and click OK. All right, suddenly we're working with a 4-page document now. That's because the pages are longer. We don't see a lot changing up here, but as we scroll down, the page just got longer and more can fit on one page because of our legal option. All right, let's change it back to letter by going to the size drop down and selecting letter at the top. We're back to a 5-page document now. How about the orientation? We know that we're looking at this with a smaller width than height, and that's what we call portrait. If we go to the orientation drop down, you'll see portrait is selected. Landscape is there as well, and when we select that, we're now looking at our page sideways. So we're still looking at a fairly long document. It's 6 pages now instead, because it's going to use the same margins. Well, that really doesn't make sense for this particular type of document, so let's set it back to portrait. There we go. Lastly, the margins. If we scroll down to the very end of this document and look at the last page, as you can see, it's filling up, well, about half the page. We can adjust the margin so that it fills up more of the last page or less. And when we change our margins, it can affect the entire document. Margins can be changed from up here on the ribbon or directly from the ruler as well. Any changes you make on the ruler are from your cursor down. So using Control Home on your keyboard will automatically move your cursor to the very top of the document. Now you can start making adjustments. For example, if we want to change the top margin, that's this gray shaded area. When we move to the shaded area, right where it begins to lighten up, you see the double arrow representing the top margin. Now we can click and drag. We can move that up. You can see now it's interfering with our header. We can also drag it down. And this will affect every page from here forward. We can also do the same with the left and right margins. So the right margin, as you can see right here, with the double horizontal arrow, can be clicked and dragged off to the right. So drag it out to about, let's say, 1/2 inch. Do the same on the left. A little trickier here because, as you can see, we have some other icons for indents and so on. You want to make sure you see the double arrow. It's very tricky to get lined up. And when you see left margin, click, drag it to the left. And if we want to go to 1/2 inch there and 1/2 inch on the right, that's all you want to be able to see And that looks pretty good right there. Now, all of a sudden, we're able to squeeze more content onto the page, and as we scroll down, you can see it's coming pretty close to the edge of the paper. And look at that, our last page really has nothing on it except for maybe some blank lines. We're able to make it fit onto 4 pages. We'd have to take out those blank lines, but it might not be all that easy to read. So yes, we can do that from the margin, but we can also do it from the ribbon. Let's go to margins now and click the drop down. This is a lot easier. We have some presets. Narrow, as you can see, uses 1/2 inch margins all the way around. And when we click that, well, it doesn't really look so hot. Let's go back to the drop down, and there's normal, 1 inch all the way around. Then we also have moderate, where we have a top margin and bottom margin of 1 inch, but smaller margins on the left and right. Let's try moderate. Not quite enough for our company bio and our large header. So click the drop down and try custom margins. Now this again is going to open up our page setup dialog, which we've seen already, but this time margins are selected. Let's just change the top margin to, how about 1.5, and click OK. Again, it's going to affect the whole document, and that works out well. So it's a little bit wider on the page at 3/4 of an inch on the left and right, but with our top margin set that way, you can see that's a pretty good look. So with the ruler, you have the ability to manually make changes to things like margins. With our ribbon and the page setup section under page layout, we can also tackle margins from there, but also orientation and paper size. It can really change the look and feel of your document.